Welcome to episode 1 in January, when I offer my habit to help others. January's habit is to help others and to be of service. January's color is gentle aqua. Our goal for the month is to lift our spirits and the spirits of others by caring, sharing, and giving. We begin the new year with the Buddhist mantra that echoes intentional mutual benefit. May all beings be happy. All beings includes you and me. In practicing intentional mutual benefit, now is the time to make the first move. Serve others intentionally. Ask, how can I be helpful? Particularly if you've helped yourself to a heaping helping of self-help and are still selfishly helpless, put another's well-being first in the month of January. Bottom line, helping others puts intentional mutual benefit into practice. Hi, I'm Steve Bhaerman, and welcome to the very first habit that kicks off the 12 Habits of Unity for the new year. The first month is January, and the habit is help others. On the 12 Habits forming path, in January, we extend the holiday giving season by making helping others a practice to start the new year off right. Bottom line, as I said, helping others puts intentional mutual benefit into practice. So as you learned in our introductory episode to the 12 Habits as the path to mutual enlightenment, this path is a new way to actually put our desire for unity and intentional evolution into practice in the real world. We can grow spiritually while at the same time putting them into practice in real life, achieving what Bruce Lipton would call heaven on earth, which is why he endorses this 12 Habits path. Inside and out, we evolve. We evolve inside, and we evolve outside in the way we are in the world. I have found that these 12 habits are the most enjoyable way, Swami would agree, to be able to put evolution into practice because we're all doing it together, we're all having fun. And speaking of having fun, I'd like to take this time right now to introduce my cohort in this webinar, the creator of the 12 Habits Path to Intentional Evolution, Elaine Parke. Welcome, Elaine.
Hey, Steve, it's really nice to be here, especially since it's the first of the new year. This is January, and so I'm going to start off by saying back Happy New Year. It kind of brings to mind the fact that one of the traditions of the new year is to make New Year's resolutions. And I've always kind of thought it was a little difficult. I don't know really anybody that's kept them for the whole year, so I kind of checked it out and looked it up, and I found out that less than 20% of the people who make New Year's resolutions, and that's probably a small percentage of people, even keep them through the whole year because, 12 months is too long to try to keep one thing going. Whereas 30 days, which is in the 12 Habits of Unity, the 30-day habit forming period of time, it's really the very reason that we've created and used the length of time for the months to make each month a time period where we can actually make a resolution to be more helpful in January, since that's what January's habit is. So I think that's a very important improvement over our ability to make habits for ourselves out of the basics. If there was ever a generic path to enlightenment, the 12 habits are like a generic path. Help others, which is January, which is we're in now, and people who will become involved as peer participants over time will know February is you count, March is resolve conflicts. All 12 of these are all ancient wisdoms. The ancient wisdoms and the habits themselves are common sense. That we all know that if we're grateful in any one of these 12 habits, life is going to be better. What the formation of the 12 habits and our work brings to the table is an organized system, an organized path. As Martin Luther King says, those who want peace need to become as organized as those who want war. So the 12 habits make it easy. You don't need to make a New Year's resolution from now on. You can just make a new month's resolution, 1 month at a time, and follow the caring habits path. And following the ancient wisdom, that the qualities that are a part of the structure of the 12 Habits path are just well-known ancient wisdoms for leading better, happier lives.
I love the idea of having these be monthly resolutions and giving ourselves a month, totally immerse ourselves in each one so that they become a natural practice for us. Let's go look at the at this first practice for January. Elaine, why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you come up with help others as the practice for January? Why is it? Why is that?
Well, Steve, as I discussed in the original introductory episode for the 12 Habits of Unity, while I had this vision in the late 80s that we could make each month of the year a period of time for celebrating, for focusing on one of 12 aspects of getting along together, which helps make improving and uplifting life more doable. I didn't actually have, in that vision, I didn't have specific categories in mind. So when I first moved to this small town in Western Pennsylvania, a whole group of people said, wow, we'd kind of like to try that. And so they spent a whole year, as I mentioned in the introductory piece of this, they spent a whole year deciding which month was going to be what. And we figured that one of the dynamics of the spiraling year is that there is more giving in December because of the holiday season, no matter what your religion is or your humanistic approach. Tons of giving. There's way more food in the food shelters. There's way more gifts. There's tons and tons of giving. But once you hit January, what happens is it just stops. It's like ends. And suddenly all that giving is over. So I think the people in the community, as we discussed it very astutely, thought, why not make January help others? Because that way, it's not such an abrupt stop. Many of you may know that statistically there's more suicides in January than any other month of the year. So by making help others the habit for January, we're helping to heal that abrupt end to the giving season that we're all so involved in and have been so uplifted by during the month of December. So that's why they made January help others.
There's something really significant about helping others because I remember one of your key childhood experiences that liberated you from an upbringing that was, to be blunt, a downbringing, was an opportunity to give to others and to transform yourself. So tell us more about that experience.
Well, Steve, again, as I explained in more detail, I came out of a very abusive childhood. And there's data that shows that people like me who have a lifelong passion of service often acquire that out of difficulties in their early childhood. But what happened to me was when I was 11, a neighbor who very adroitly was probably aware of the dynamics in our household. We all know more about our neighbors than they think we do. And so one day, this neighbor invited me to take me down to the Red Cross and introduced me to the volunteer coordinator there. And pretty soon, I was invited to become a junior Red Cross member. I have a little badge, I still have it. And all of a sudden, as I started to volunteer at the Red Cross, people said nice things to me, like for the first time in my life. People were thanking me, people were appreciating me. And for the first time, I felt like I mattered, that I had something that I could give to the world. And I knew that by being there at the Red Cross, I was adding to the quality of life for the people that I was working with in that community. And that actually never left me. And I volunteered all the rest of my life with children, always because I always feel that I owe a debt of gratitude to that neighbor. I dedicate all my volunteering to that neighbor who taught me that real truth. There's another aspect, which basically makes the point that, like, helping others is kind of a twofer, if you want to put it that way. Meaning, you help out others, and guess who else gets helped? You. Because you also are the one that feels the uplifting happiness of the goodness of what you've done for others. And the point I want to make here is we live in sort of, there's the givers and then there's the takers. At least we view life that way. So that if we are fortunate enough to be able to give our time or be able to give a little money, we go, yeah, we're really great, we're givers. And sometimes we forget that that everybody wants to be a giver. And that perhaps the people that are normally not the givers want to be givers just as much as we do. And I have a great story, and I'm going to show the audience. This is a pencil that I've had for 30 years. It's a little chiseled stub of a pencil. When I was first writing the curriculum for the 12 Habits of Unity, I was in a public library in the middle of Pittsburgh, and across the street from the library was a homeless shelter. And so the homeless would be going in there at night, and then they'd come out, and in the winter, of course, they'd be all around the plaza where this was, but many times the people would come into the library. So this particular day, I was sitting at one of these kiosks, and I'm kind of dating myself to be at the time going to a library and working from the kiosk. Anyway, I was trying to take some notes for the curriculum, and I looked around and I couldn't find my pencil anywhere. Somewhere, just no pencil. And all of a sudden, this wizened, weathered, old hand came across the back of my shoulder with the pencil that I just showed you. And I looked up and I saw the face of a man who wanted to help me write down what I needed to know. He had noticed, part of helping is actually just noticing. He was clearly one of the homeless shelter people who others are normally helping. But on that day, that man gave me something that I absolutely had to have to continue the work that I'm sitting here talking to you about today. And consequently, that pencil is one of my most treasured possessions because it taught me that everybody wants to help others. There's not just the helpors and the helpees. Everybody wants to help others. And thank goodness there are so many ways to help others that don't cost money. And we'll, of course, get into that over time.
And what a poignant story. It's funny, I grew up in a poor family. We didn't have any money and so on. We were proud, though. We were very proud. And what I realized rather recently was that pride, that we were poor, that we didn't take any charity from people, that was really a way for us to cover over the shame that we felt for being poor. And I remember I had a girlfriend at one point, and her father said, it would be great if poor people could actually help other people. That would be a way for them to elevate themselves. I completely did not understand that. I didn't understand that until much later in life, that everybody needs to have a chance to be able to serve and to be served. It's funny that as a child, the only time I had an experience kind of like yours, but it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I was a young teenager, and of course that's the closest we've come so far to blowing ourselves up. And I went into a depression. I went into a very deep depression to the point where the family doctor actually had to prescribe antidepressant for me. And the way that I pulled myself out of the depression, I said, if nothing matters, if we're all going to be blown up, if there's nothing, there's no purpose, at least I can help, I can be helpful. And for the first time, perhaps, I was helpful around the house. I started helping my mom do things. I started noticing how I could be helpful to other people. And it came out of this space of having all of this illusional reality kind of taken away, and that's what I was left with, so a way of taking myself out of myself. Years later, I did a practice called reevaluation co-counseling, and one of the points that they make in reevaluation counseling is that you can have your attention in or your attention out. And when we are concerned with our ego, whether it's, oh my God, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Or look at me, I'm the greatest, the overinflated ego. When we're in that ego space, our attention is it's on ourselves. We're spinning this thing inside. And so one of the practices was, how do we get our attention out? How do we take ourselves out of ourselves, put ourselves in the world, and notice what's going on and how we can be of service? And that homeless man who handed you the little pencil stub, he had his attention out.
Steve, I suspect you have a few more stories, but what you've just talked about reminds me of, actually not my story, a little bit my story, but actually it's a story that comes from the influence that the 12 Habits of Unity has had in the communities where it's been operating for nearly 30 years, mostly throughout the greater Pittsburgh area and in Rwanda. But one interesting story was from one of the communities that had been running the 12 Habits, and in a community, it's on radio, they do posters, kids get bookmarks, pencils. So public media is kind of used to expose the merchants get involved, the schools get involved. It's kind of a community campaign. There is the book. There was an original copy of the book, The Golden Rule Revolution, which is now The Habits of Unity. But they would read from the book on morning announcements in schools. So the community was resonating with Help Others, for instance, in January, and then each of the monthly habits. So this particular community had kind of a community day and a community sing on the 4th of July with fireworks ending that event. So it was kind of neat because on a sort of a picnic bench just inside the opening or the gate to the field, the kind of gang kids, I guess you'd say, from the community, shirts off and some sort of leather-ish things or whatever, easily identifiable. They were just all kind of sitting on the top of this bench just inside the field, kind of hunkered over and but they were there, they were there and kind of watching things happen. So the afternoon went on and people started to stream in for the community sing, and we had these community songbooks. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to get people to help hand out the community songbooks. So I grabbed the box and I kind of went over to the bench where these kids were. And I said, would you please help by handing out these songbooks? And they all just kind of, closed their arms up and kind of put their head down like they hadn't even noticed I was there. And I got the clear impression that wasn't going to work. So I had to leave the box, so I left the box sitting there and I ran off trying to find someone else to help hand out the programs. And as I found a couple of recruits, I headed back toward the main gate and I saw all these people coming toward me, and all of them were holding the songbooks. And you know what? Those kids had handed out the songbooks. There they were, standing at the gate, handing songbooks to everybody that came in. It's one of the reasons I feel so blessed about having initiated this program. I've just had so many amazing experiences like that. And I'm the one that's had most of them. So I'm hoping that as we get peer participants involved in doing this, I'll be able to share the fun and the enjoyment and the just absolute joy that I felt that day, watching these gang kids who probably never offered to do anything for anybody else in their life. That's not a fair thing to say, but you know what I'm trying to say. It was absolutely spectacular.
We know a lot of people watching this have been involved in the self-help movement. I know I have for decades. And as the Swami says, why is it that so many people looking for self-help wind up selfish and helpless? How do we balance this out? Why is that the case? And how can this habit of helping others in a very conscious and proactive way make a difference and have you help yourself at the same time?
I think we've answered that question again with several examples, because what we've shown, not only with examples, but what is also true statistically, is that when you put yourself outside yourself, when you, no matter how depressed you are, whatever is going on in your life that's bad, when you extend yourself beyond your own body, be aware of who's around you, when you reach out and help someone. I think that's an old commercial for an old.
I think it's touching them on.
That's really aging me. What is it? Reach out and touch someone. I won't say the name of the company because this is not an ad. But anyway, what's happening is you are really extending the uplifting influence coming from you out into the universe. What's really interesting, those of us that are involved in enlightenment and understanding what's going on with common consciousness, knowing that we're moving toward common consciousness, and knowing that we're coming out of the old age and moving into the new age of Aquarius, we sort of accept the chaos that's going on right now as like part of the change, without really thinking that we can make it, that if we all join together in organizing our consciousness month by month, so that all of our consciousness in January is about helping others, and all of our consciousness in the next month is about that habit, and so forth. We're expanding our consciousness and sending it out there. And therefore, we can make the chaos we're going through, we can still make it better. We don't have to sit back and just work on our own self-help stuff. We can actually make it better, even though we understand that it's the chaos that's expected of the passage from the old age to the new age. So I really think that's the lesson to be learned here. And that's why help others is a twofer, as I was saying before. Because once the age of Aquarius is here, then actually the phrase help others technically will be obsolete, because we won't think of an other as another. Another will be part of us. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to draw everyone in to seeing each of us as part of all of us, just like the cells in our body do. They all work together like a community. And that's a whole other topic. So I've made my point that right now we can help this age of transition by helping others, reaching out, even if it's only, sending our own vibrations, our meditations, our reflections out into the universe, where to people who have no idea what we're thinking or no idea what we know about what's going on. But they are still going to receive those vibrations. And that's the work that we can do going ahead.
That reminds me of something Gandhi once said. I'm paraphrasing here. He was asked, what is it like to serve people so selflessly? And he responded that because we really are all connected, serving others was the most selfish thing he could do. He said he was doing it for his own spiritual development. So this all resonates with that Buddhist prayer, mantra, affirmation, may all beings be happy, which is really a proactive expression of the golden rule. If all beings are happy, I'm included. I am one of those happy beings. Nobody is excluded. I'm being happy. I'm affirming my own happiness and well-being, and it's not at the expense of anyone or anything else. And so if there's anything that I want to affirm about this help others in January, it sounds like a very, very simple, almost a cliched thing to do. When you do it with the consciousness that in this new world, the new world order that we're creating, of intentional mutual benefit, of true symbiosis, when you put something out there in the world that is helpful to others, this is the positive, what goes around comes around. If you think of each of us as kind of a center of a circle, and we radiate this well-being out through all of our actions and helpfulness to other people, we are actually changing the field. This is really what the affirmation is. Beyond religion and non-religion, we can all agree that there's a higher power expressed through love that expresses goodness. And that's the resonant field that we want to be immersed in ourselves the entire month of January, recognizing when we're helping others, we're helping ourselves, and we're seeing different ways to help people. There's one thing that we haven't talked about, and that is, sometimes there's a sense that sometimes people are so helpful that we don't really allow people to learn how to help themselves. So how do we actually help people not take care of them so that they don't learn how to help themselves, but help people help themselves and help others? How do we do that?
The 12 Habits of Unity is exactly that. We are simply putting the messages out there, and we're using media, we're using the consciousness of one another to reach out and suggest to people that they can help others. I come out of advertising, as we've learned in the earlier introductory segment. So, no advertiser has ever been able to make someone buy Coca-Cola or Nike or whatever. They have to ask them. They have to make it a request. They have to make the suggestion and then make fulfilling that suggestion attractive enough that the person wants to do it. So the entire structure, the organized structure of the 12 habits is created as exactly that. Not doing something for someone else, but inviting people who hear the 12 habit messages to do it for themselves. In the early 80s, Ken Carey wrote a book called Starseed Transmissions. And in that book, he explained that we would arrive at an age where the media is like a pseudo cosmic consciousness, that it influences people with the waves and gives them ideas and thoughts that influences their behaviors for better or for worse. In the case of advertisers, they want them to buy things. But that we can use that media for good, and that we can, in addition to putting out our own consciousness into the universe with our meditations and our reflections, we can also let media deliver the messages that are going to uplift people so that they're not being helped by someone else physically, but they're learning to be helped on their own. And one of the most fabulous examples of this in the history of the 12 habits is that in the early 90s, now we were already in, maybe 6 or 8 schools and communities, but when KDKA-TV decided to make public service announcements out of the 12 habits, suddenly, several million people in Western Pennsylvania and even Northern West Virginia were receiving the messages, help others, whatever the monthly habit was, 2 or 3 times a day. And within less than a year and a half, we were already in close to 200 schools and communities. So I think the model that we're using here is a synthesis of the cosmic consciousness and using our ability to send out our cosmic conscious messages in an organized way, together with using media whenever we can. Someone can go to our website and load down a bookmark, for instance, if they want to really remember to help others during the month of January. So I think that's really what's behind it. It does lead me to close with another good reason why January, the first month of the year, is Help Others, is because Help Others is a theme that's a twofer, where you're not only helping the people that you choose to open a door for, if it's just that simple, or send a little money to, but you're also uplifting and helping yourself because you're getting yourself out of yourself. Is very, very important. So we want to ask all of our peer participants hearing this, to try this experiment with us. Become involved. As January is the start of the year, let's help others, because we already know we're also helping ourselves. And thank you, Steve, for all you do.
Thank you, Elaine. Let's talk about what we can do. We're going to create a very simple practice, and we're hoping that by clicking on the various links, you'll be able to get to our Facebook page and share this with other people, become part of an awakening community of people who are practicing this. So begin each day in January with the question, how can I be of help to another today? Just open it up with a question. You may not have the answer, but by having the question, it's more likely that the answers will come to you. And then at the end of every day, as part of your practice of gratitude for the day, how did I practice intentional mutual benefit today? How did I help somebody? And how did somebody actually reach out and help me?